At her work party, Ember Sollace raised her glass and said I wasn't on her financial level, not even on her ex's, loud enough for the room to hear. I didn't flinch. I said she was right, excused myself from the table, and sent one text with a single word. Arrived. My name is Jared Sollace, and I run a custom auto shop in the grittier part of our Midwestern suburb. Ember practices corporate law at one of those glass tower firms downtown where they measure success in billable hours and corner offices. Tonight, she dragged me to her annual work party at the Meridian Steakhouse, all mahogany panels and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where appetizers cost more than my crew makes in a day. Seriously, Jared, Ember continued, her voice carrying that particular edge she got after 3 glasses of wine. My ex-husband drives a Maserati. What do you drive again? That rusty pickup? The table went quiet. 6 of her colleagues suddenly found their plates fascinating. I could feel their second-hand embarrassment radiating like heat from an engine block. But I'd been expecting this moment for weeks. You're absolutely right, I said, setting down my fork with deliberate calm. I'm not on your level. Ember blinked, clearly expecting a fight. Instead, I pulled out my phone and typed that single word. The response came immediately, ETA 3 minutes. Where are you going? She asked as I stood. Just getting some fresh air. I smiled at the table. Please continue your conversation about quarterly bonuses. I'm sure it's riveting. The Meridian's front windows faced the street, and I positioned myself where the entire dining room could see. My watch read 9:47 p.m. Right on schedule, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb in perfect formation. Professional drivers stepped out, followed by 2 men in expensive suits carrying leather portfolios. Inside, I could see heads turning. Phones came out. Ember had moved to the window, her face pressed against the glass like a kid at a toy store. The lead attorney approached me with military precision. Mr. Sollace, the documents you requested? He handed me a thick folder. I opened it slowly, making sure the gold seal and official letterhead were visible to anyone watching. Property transfer documents, acquisition papers, all legitimate, all legal, all timed for maximum impact. Thank you, gentlemen. I shook their hands formally. Please bill the usual account. As they departed, I walked back into the restaurant. The entire room had gone silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Ember intercepted me halfway to our table. What was that? What did you just do? Business, I said simply. You mentioned I wasn't on your financial level. I thought I'd provide some context. She grabbed for the folder, but I held it just out of reach. Jared, stop this. Whatever game you're playing, no game, just facts. I looked past her to the table where her colleagues sat frozen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a lovely evening. The conversation about financial levels was particularly enlightening. I headed for the exit, Ember trailing behind me like a comet's tail. You can't just leave. We drove together. Call an Uber, I said without turning around. Or ask your ex with the Maserati. The parking lot felt like a sanctuary after the suffocating atmosphere inside. I climbed into my rusty pickup, a 1967 Chevy C10 that I'd restored from a bare frame, worth more than most people's houses if they knew what to look for. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy, my head mechanic. How'd it go, boss? Better than expected, I replied. Phase 1 complete. I'd been planning this moment for 3 months, ever since I'd discovered Ember's little side project. Not just the affair, though Liam Baird, her smug finance bro colleague, was definitely part of the equation. No, this went deeper. This was about respect, about being dismissed and underestimated for the last time. The property I'd just acquired. The historic Caro building downtown, named after Ember's grandfather. She'd been trying to buy it for years, planned to convert it into luxury condos with her name on the deed. I'd outbid her by exactly $1, using a shell company and some creative financing that was completely legal and utterly devastating. My phone rang. Ember. Jared, please, come back. People are staring. Let them stare, I said. You wanted to make a public statement about my worth. I just provided a response. What building did you buy? What was in that folder? I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. Good. For too long, she'd treated me like an accessory, something to be tolerated rather than respected. Tonight, that changed. Drive safe, Ember. We'll talk when you get home. I hung up and started the truck. The engine rumbled to life with a deep, satisfying growl that no Maserati could match. In my rearview mirror, I could see her standing in the restaurant's entrance, still holding her phone, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. The drive home took 20 minutes through neighborhoods that told the story of our town's evolution. Old money estates gave way to middle-class developments, then blue-collar streets where people worked with their hands and measured worth in different ways. My shop sat at the border between worlds, close enough to serve the wealthy clients who wanted their classic cars restored, far enough from downtown to keep the overhead reasonable. I pulled into our driveway and sat in the truck for a moment, looking at the house Ember had insisted we buy. Modern, angular, all glass and steel, designed to impress rather than comfort. The mortgage payments ate up most of her salary, but she'd wanted the address, the status symbol. Inside, I poured myself a whiskey and settled into my workshop in the basement. The space was mine, tools organized with military precision, project cars in various stages of completion, the smell of motor oil and possibility hanging in the air. The folder sat on my workbench like evidence in a trial. Inside were the deeds to 3 properties I'd acquired over the past month, all purchased through intermediaries, all chosen for maximum psychological impact. The Caro building was just the beginning. My phone buzzed with notifications. Social media was already lighting up with speculation about the mysterious motorcade at the Meridian. Someone had filmed the whole thing, and the video was spreading through our social circle like wildfire. At 11:30, I heard Ember's car in the driveway. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floors upstairs, then down the basement steps. "We need to talk," she said, appearing in the workshop doorway. She'd changed out of her party dress into jeans and a sweater, her makeup slightly smeared. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 15 years ago, before the law degree and the corner office and the gradual erosion of everything we'd built together. "I'm listening," I said, not looking up from the carburetor I was rebuilding. "What you did tonight was humiliating." "For who?" "For me. My colleagues think—" "Your colleagues think exactly what you taught them to think." I set down my wrench and finally met her eyes. "That I'm beneath you. That I don't measure up. That I'm some kind of charity case you keep around for entertainment." She flinched. "That's not—" "It's exactly what it is." I stood, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "But here's the thing, Ember. You measured me by the wrong standards." I opened the folder and spread the documents across my workbench. Property deeds, acquisition papers, financial statements. Her eyes widened as she recognized the addresses. The Caro building, the Meridian Steakhouse, the parking structure where your office is located. I pointed to each deed in turn. All purchased in the last 30 days, all now under my control. Her face went pale. "That's impossible. The building alone is worth $12 million. Yes, I know. I paid $12,001 for it." I smiled. Cash offer, no financing contingencies. The seller found it irresistible. "Where did you get $12 million? That was the question I'd been waiting for. The question that would reveal just how little she actually knew about the man she'd been married to for 15 years. "The same place I got the money for this house, for your car, for your law school loans." I leaned against the workbench. "My business, Ember. The one you think is just a grease monkey operation in a converted warehouse." Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see her trying to process the information, trying to reconcile her assumptions with reality. Sollace Custom Restoration doesn't just fix cars for weekend warriors. We handle insurance restorations for classic car collectors, movie studios, museums. That '67 Mustang I finished last month, it's going to Steve McQueen's estate for their private collection. Price tag, $400,000 for one car. I pulled out my phone and showed her the business banking app. The account balance made her stumble backward. You thought I was struggling to keep up with your lifestyle. The truth is, I've been subsidizing it. Your salary barely covers your shopping habits and that lease on the BMW you insisted on. Ember sank into the chair beside my workbench, staring at the phone screen like it might change if she looked hard enough. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. You assumed. You decided what I was worth based on the grease under my fingernails and the fact that I didn't wear a suit to work. I took the phone back. But assumptions can be dangerous, especially when you build your whole worldview on them. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then her lawyer instincts kicked in. What do you want? Is this about the prenup? Because we can renegotiate. This isn't about money, Ember. It's about respect. It's about the fact that you've spent the last 3 years treating me like an embarrassment, and tonight you decided to make it public. I was just the wine, and everyone was talking about their husbands' careers, and you were ashamed of yours. I gathered up the documents. Well, congratulations. You no longer have to be ashamed of being married to a mechanic. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means we're going to have a conversation about the future of our marriage. But first, we're going to have a conversation about Liam Baird. The color drained from her face completely. Bingo. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Tall guy, works in your firm's finance division, drives a Tesla, has been texting you at all hours for the past 6 months. I pulled out a second folder from my desk drawer. Should I continue? She stood up quickly, knocking over the chair. You've been spying on me? I've been paying attention. There's a difference. I opened the folder and showed her printed screenshots of text messages, restaurant receipts, hotel charges on her credit card. Did you really think I wouldn't notice, or did you just not care? Ember stared at the evidence like it was a snake that might strike. Jared, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're a lawyer. Explaining is what you do. I closed the folder, but I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in consequences. What kind of consequences? I smiled, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine. The kind that matched the offense. You wanted to measure worth in public? Fine. We'll let the public decide what everything is really worth. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I saw Liam's name on the screen. You should probably answer that, I said. He's probably wondering why his credit card stopped working an hour ago. What did you do? Nothing illegal. Just made some calls to some mutual acquaintances in the finance world. Turns out Liam's been playing fast and loose with client funds. Not stealing exactly, but definitely bending rules. The kind of bending that makes partners nervous. Ember's phone kept buzzing, text after text from Liam. You destroyed his career? I provided information to interested parties. What they did with it was their choice. I headed for the stairs. Just like what you do next is yours. Where are you going? To bed. Tomorrow's a big day. I have a meeting with the Meridian's management company about some changes I want to make to their lease agreement. I left her standing in the workshop, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd misunderstood about our life together. Upstairs, I could hear her phone ringing again and again. In our bedroom, I packed a bag with enough clothes for a few days. I'd be staying at the apartment above my shop until we figured out what came next. The apartment Ember didn't know existed. In the building she didn't know I owned. As I packed, I thought about the conversation we'd have tomorrow after she'd had time to process everything. After Liam had finished explaining to her how his carefully constructed life was falling apart, after she'd realized that the man she'd dismissed as beneath her notice had been playing a game she didn't even know existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Boss, you see the video from tonight? You're famous." I checked social media. The video from the restaurant had gone viral in our town's social circles. Comments ranged from speculation about my mysterious wealth to admiration for the way I'd handled Ember's public humiliation. Several people had recognized the legal documents and were putting together the pieces about the property acquisitions. Tomorrow, everyone would know that the mechanic had outmaneuvered the lawyer, that the blue-collar husband had been playing chess while his white-collar wife was playing checkers. I set the phone aside and finished packing. Outside, I could hear Ember's voice rising as she talked to someone. Probably Liam, probably trying to figure out how to salvage whatever they'd thought they were building together. But that was her problem now. I'd spent 15 years being underestimated, dismissed, and taken for granted. Tonight, that ended. Tomorrow, we'd start measuring worth by different standards. I woke up in my apartment above the shop to the sound of my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. 17 missed calls from Ember, 12 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 43 text messages. The video from last night had apparently grown legs. The apartment was sparse but comfortable, a place I'd kept as an escape when home felt too much like a showroom and not enough like a sanctuary. Coffee maker, bed, shower, and a window overlooking the shop floor where my crew was already at work on a 1969 Camaro restoration. I scrolled through the messages while the coffee brewed. Most were from Ember, progressing from confusion to anger to something approaching panic. The last one, sent at 3:47 a.m., just said, "We need to talk, please." But it was the message from an unknown number that caught my attention. "Impressive show last night. We should meet." VV could only be Veronica Mace, Ember's law partner and best friend since college. Veronica had always treated me with the kind of polite condescension reserved for service workers and distant relatives. If she wanted to meet, it meant Ember had called in reinforcements. I texted back, "Shop opens at 8. You know where to find me." Tommy knocked on my door at 7:30, carrying a bag of donuts and wearing his biggest grin. "Boss, you've got to see this." He handed me his phone, showing a local news website. The headline read, "Mystery Millionaire Mechanic Stuns High Society." "They're calling you the Mystery Millionaire Mechanic." Tommy laughed. "Like you're some kind of superhero." "Just a guy who pays attention," I said. But I had to admit the attention felt good after years of being invisible. "So what's the plan? You really bought all those buildings?" "Among other things." I handed him back his phone. "We're going to have some visitors today. Ember, probably her friend Veronica, maybe others. Keep working, don't get involved in the drama." "You got it, boss. But for what it's worth, it's about time someone showed that wife of yours what's what." Tommy had never liked Ember, mainly because she treated him and the rest of my crew like they were invisible. She'd come to the shop maybe 5 times in 15 years, always staying in her car, always acting like the smell of motor oil might contaminate her designer clothes. At 8:15, Ember's BMW pulled into the parking lot. She sat in the car for a full minute before getting out, probably gathering her courage. She looked like she hadn't slept, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her makeup minimal. She found me in the main bay, working on the Camaro's engine. The car belonged to a collector in Chicago who'd paid me $50,000 to bring it back to showroom condition. Just another job that Ember had never bothered to ask about. "Jared." Her voice was smaller than I'd heard it in years. "Ember." I didn't look up from the carburetor I was adjusting. "Can we talk, privately?" I nodded toward the office in the back corner of the shop. It was glass-walled, so my crew could see us but not hear the conversation. Professional distance. She sat in the chair across from my desk, the same chair where clients discussed their dream restorations and collectors negotiated prices for one-of-a-kind builds. It felt appropriate somehow. "I owe you an apology," she started. "You owe me several, but go ahead. Last night I was wrong. About everything. I had too much to drink and I was showing off and you said what you really think. I leaned back in my chair. The alcohol didn't put those thoughts in your head, Ember. It just let them out. She flinched. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've been financing your lifestyle while you complain about being married to a mechanic? Is it fair that you've been having an affair with your colleague while I work 60-hour weeks to keep up with your spending? It's not an affair. We haven't... Please. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken 3 days ago. Her and Liam in the parking garage of her office building, locked in an embrace that was definitely not professional. Don't insult my intelligence on top of everything else. She stared at the photo, and I watched her lawyer brain trying to find an angle, a defense, a way to spin the evidence. It just happened. We were working late, and he was going through a difficult time with his ex-wife, and... Stop. I put the phone away. I don't need the details. I need to know what you want to do about it. What do you mean? I mean, we're at a crossroads. You can either admit that you've been living a lie about who I am and what I'm worth, or you can double down on your assumptions and see where that gets you. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the shop floor where my crew was working. For the first time, she seemed to actually see what we did here. The precision, the craftsmanship, the artistry involved in bringing these machines back to life. I never understood, she said finally. I thought this was just a hobby that got out of hand. It started as a hobby, but hobbies don't pay for houses in Maple Ridge or BMW leases or law school loans. I opened my laptop and showed her the business financials. This hobby has been supporting our entire lifestyle for the past decade. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the numbers. Revenue, profit margins, client contracts. The business was more successful than her law practice, and it had been for years. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. You decided what this was, and that was that. I closed the laptop. But more importantly, because I liked being underestimated. It's useful in business. People assume the guy in coveralls doesn't know about finance or contracts or market dynamics. They get careless. Like I did. Like you did. A knock on the office door interrupted us. Veronica Mace stood outside, dressed in her usual power suit, looking like she was about to argue a case before the Supreme Court. Come in, I called. Veronica entered with the confidence of someone who was used to being the smartest person in the room. She'd built her reputation as a corporate lawyer by being ruthless, calculating, and absolutely certain of her own superiority. Jared, quite a performance last night. Veronica, thanks for coming by. She sat down without being invited, crossing her legs and fixing me with the stare she probably used on opposing counsel. We need to discuss how to handle this situation. The video is spreading, people are talking, and Ember's reputation is Ember's responsibility, I finished. Not mine. You're married. What affects her affects you. That's an interesting perspective, considering she's been having an affair with her colleague. Veronica didn't even blink. Marriages go through rough patches. The important thing is managing the public perception. I looked at Ember, who was staring at her hands. Did you know? Know what? About the affair? Did Veronica know you were involved with Liam? Ember's silence was answer enough. Of course she knew, Veronica said smoothly. I'm her partner and her friend. But that's not the issue here. The issue is that you've made a private matter public, and now we need to control the narrative. Control the narrative, I repeated. Like you controlled the narrative about my worth, about my business, about my role in our marriage. You let us believe, I let you assume. There's a difference. I stood up. But since we're talking about controlling narratives, let me share some information that might interest you. I pulled out another folder from my desk. Veronica's confidence flickered for just a moment. Liam Baird's financial irregularities weren't the only interesting thing I discovered when I started paying attention. I opened the folder. Your law firm has been overbilling clients for paralegal work, charging senior partner rates for junior associate hours, and padding expense accounts for the past 18 months. Veronica's face went pale. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. But I'm not making accusations. I'm just sharing information I happened to come across while researching property acquisitions. I showed her copies of billing records, expense reports, client invoices. Funny thing about running a business. You develop relationships with accountants, auditors, people who notice patterns. Where did you get these? Public records, mostly. Amazing what you can find when you know how to look. I closed the folder. Of course, I haven't shared this information with anyone. Yet. The office went silent, except for the sound of air tools and engines from the shop floor. Ember looked back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. What do you want? Veronica asked finally. I want honesty. I want respect. And I want people to stop assuming they know who I am based on the clothes I wear to work. And if we give you that, then maybe these documents stay in my desk drawer instead of finding their way to the State Bar Association. Veronica stood up abruptly. This is extortion. This is consequences, I corrected. You wanted to play games with people's reputations and livelihoods. Now you get to see how it feels when someone else holds the cards. She looked at Ember. Are you going to let him threaten me? Ember finally looked up from her hands. He's not threatening you, Veronica. He's responding to threats. There's a difference. I can't believe you're taking his side. I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to figure out how I got everything so wrong. Ember stood up too. I think you should go. Veronica's mask finally slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. Fine, but don't come crying to me when this all falls apart. You made your choice. She stalked out of the office, her heels clicking angrily on the concrete floor. Through the windows, we watched her get into her Mercedes and speed out of the parking lot. She's going to cause trouble, Ember said. She's been causing trouble. Now she's just going to be more obvious about it. Ember sat back down, looking exhausted. What happens now? That depends. Are you willing to admit that you've been wrong about me? About us? About what our marriage actually is? Yes. And are you willing to end whatever you have with Liam? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. It's complicated. No, it's not. It's a choice. Him or me, the life you thought you wanted, or the life we actually built together. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, but understand that while you're thinking, I'm moving forward. I pulled out my phone and showed her a text message. I have a meeting this afternoon with a divorce attorney. Just exploring options. Jared, please, I'm not filing anything today, but I'm also not going to sit around waiting for you to decide whether I'm worth keeping. I walked to the office door. You know where to find me when you make up your mind. She left without another word, and I watched her drive away in the BMW that I'd been making payments on for 3 years. The car she'd insisted she needed for her image, for her clients, for her sense of self-worth. Tommy appeared in the office doorway. Everything okay, boss? Getting better, I said. How's the Camaro coming? Should be ready for pickup tomorrow. Mr. Davidson's going to be thrilled. Good. What's next on the schedule? That 57 Thunderbird for the museum in Detroit. They want it ready for their summer exhibition. I nodded, already shifting my focus back to work. Cars were honest. They either ran or they didn't. They were either restored properly or they weren't. No hidden agendas, no assumptions, no games. Just craftsmanship, attention to detail, and respect for what came before. Unlike marriages, apparently. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Impressive. But this isn't over. V. I showed the message to Tommy. What do you think? I think Veronica Mace just declared war, he said. Question is, does she know who she's fighting? I deleted the message and put the phone away. She's about to find out. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. I was in early, working on the Thunderbird's transmission, when 3 men in expensive suits walked into my shop. They had that particular look of people who were used to getting their way through intimidation rather than negotiation. Jared Sollace? The lead man was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses rather than honest work. That's me. What can I do for you? Richard Blackwood, senior partner at Blackwood, Mason Associates. He extended a hand that felt like a cold fish. I believe you know my junior partner, Veronica Mace. We've met. I wiped my hands on a shop rag but didn't shake his hand. What brings you to my humble establishment? We need to discuss your recent activities, perhaps somewhere more private? I gestured toward my office. Lead the way. The 3 men arranged themselves like they were conducting a deposition, with Blackwood in the center and his associates flanking him. Professional intimidation tactics. Mr. Sollace, it's come to our attention that you've been making certain accusations against our firm. I haven't made any accusations. I've simply gathered information. Information that you're using to threaten Ms. Mace. I shared some documents with Ms. Mace. What she chooses to do with that information is her business. Blackwood leaned forward. Let me be direct. We know about your little real estate acquisitions. We know about your wife's indiscretions. And we know you're looking for leverage. Sounds like you know everything, then. What do you need me for? We want to make a deal. I sat back in my chair, curious despite myself. What kind of deal? You return the documents you've obtained through questionable means, you stop interfering in our business, and we'll make sure your wife's career survives her recent poor judgment. And if I don't? One of the associates spoke up. We have resources, Mr. Sollace. Legal resources, financial resources, connections throughout the business community. It would be unfortunate if your shop suddenly faced zoning challenges, tax audits, labor complaints. I stood up slowly. Are you threatening me? We're explaining reality, Blackwood said. You're a small business owner going up against a major law firm. How do you think that ends? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I walked to my office window and looked out at the shop floor. Tommy and the crew were working on their projects, focused and professional. These men had no idea what they were walking into. Can I ask you something? I turned back to face them. Did Veronica tell you how I obtained those documents? She said you had them illegally acquired. Interesting. I opened my laptop and pulled up a series of files. Because every single document I showed her came from public records, court filings, or information provided by your own clients. I turned the screen toward them. See, when you're in the restoration business, you develop relationships with insurance companies, auction houses, collectors, rich people who drive expensive cars and sometimes need legal services. Blackwood's confidence flickered. What are you saying? I'm saying your clients talk. And when they talk about being overcharged, about billing irregularities, about feeling like they're being taken advantage of, well, sometimes they ask for advice. I pulled out my phone and showed them a recording app. This conversation, for instance. 3 lawyers walking into my shop to threaten me with zoning violations and tax audits unless I stop exposing their billing fraud. That's conspiracy, intimidation, possibly extortion. The associates looked at each other nervously. Blackwood's face had gone red. You can't record us without consent. Actually, I can. Single-party consent state. I consented to record myself. I smiled. You really should know the local laws better. Delete that recording. No. We'll sue you for harassment. With what evidence? You came to my place of business to threaten me. I defended myself. I sat back down. But here's what I'll do. I'll make you the same deal you offered me. What deal? You leave me alone, You stop trying to intimidate me, and I'll consider keeping this conversation private. I paused. Oh, and you fire Veronica Mace. That's impossible. Then we have a problem. I stood up and opened the office door. Gentlemen, I have work to do. Real work. The kind that creates value instead of just shuffling papers around. They left without another word, but I could see Blackwood on his phone before he even reached his car. This was far from over. Tommy appeared at my shoulder. Friends of yours? Lawyers. They wanted to explain reality to me. How'd that go? They learned some things about reality they weren't expecting. An hour later, my phone rang. Ember. Jared, what did you do? Richard Blackwood just called me screaming about recordings and threats. I defended myself against intimidation tactics, nothing more. He says you're trying to destroy the firm. The firm is destroying itself. I'm just documenting the process. This is getting out of hand. Can we please just sit down and talk like adults? I tried that yesterday. You said you needed time to think. I've been thinking. Can you meet me for lunch? Somewhere neutral? I considered it. Part of me wanted to keep pushing, to see how far I could drive them before they broke completely. But another part, the part that remembered why I'd married Ember in the first place, wanted to find a way back from this mess. The diner on 5th Street, 1 o'clock. Thank you. I spent the rest of the morning working on the Thunderbird, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythm of restoration. There was something therapeutic about taking something broken and making it whole again, about bringing back the original vision that time and neglect had obscured. The diner was a throwback to the 1950s, all chrome and red vinyl, the kind of place where blue-collar workers ate lunch next to bank presidents without anyone thinking twice about it. Ember was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking uncomfortable in her designer suit. Thank you for coming, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. Thank you for picking a place that doesn't require a jacket and tie. She almost smiled at that. I deserved that. The waitress came over, Helen, who'd been working there since before I was born. She knew everyone's order by heart and didn't take attitude from anyone, regardless of how much money they made. Coffee for both, I told her, and I'll have the meatloaf special. Same, Ember said, surprising me. She usually ordered salads when we ate out together. So, I said after Helen left, you've been thinking? I have, and I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth. I'm listening. She took a breath. I've been unhappy for a long time. Not with you exactly, but with everything. My job, our life, the way people see me. I worked so hard to get where I am, but it never felt like enough. So, you decided I wasn't enough either? No. I decided you were too much. I frowned. What does that mean? It means you were comfortable with who you are. You didn't need validation from other people, didn't need to prove anything to anyone. And that made me feel small. Helen brought our coffee, giving us a moment to process. You felt small because I was confident? I felt small because you were genuine. Everything about my life is performance, Jared. The clothes, the car, the office, the way I talk to clients. It's all designed to project an image. And I wasn't playing along. You weren't playing at all, you were just yourself. And that highlighted how fake everything else was. Our food arrived, and we ate in silence for a few minutes. The meatloaf was exactly what it claimed to be. No pretense, no garnish, just honest comfort food. What about Liam? I asked finally. She set down her fork. Liam made me feel important. He understood the pressure, the need to maintain appearances. When I was with him, I felt like I was living up to some standard. What standard? I don't know. That's the problem. She looked out the window at the street beyond. I spent so much time trying to be worthy of success that I forgot what success was supposed to feel like. And now? Now I realize I've been an idiot. I had everything I actually wanted, and I nearly threw it away because it didn't look like what I thought I was supposed to want. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did believe her. But trust, once broken, doesn't heal just because someone apologizes. What about Veronica and the firm? Ember's expression darkened. Veronica's been pushing me toward this for months. She kept saying I was settling, that I deserved better, that you were holding me back. Why would she care? I don't know. But after yesterday, after seeing how she reacted when you stood up to her, Ember shook her head. I think there's something else going on. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number, but not the same one as before. Your wife's friend has been asking questions about you. Thought you should know. A friend, I showed the message to Ember. Any idea who this might be? She read it twice. No, but it doesn't surprise me. Veronica's been obsessed with you lately. Always asking questions, wanting to know about your business, your finances. What kind of questions? How long you've been successful, whether you were hiding money, whether you might be involved in anything questionable. A cold realization settled in my stomach. She's been investigating me. It looks that way. But why? Ember met my eyes across the table. I think she wanted to destroy our marriage, and I think I helped her do it. Helen refilled our coffee cups, oblivious to the drama unfolding in her diner. Outside, life continued as normal, people going to work, running errands, living their lives without the complications we'd created for ourselves. There's something else, Ember said. Something I should have told you yesterday. What? The night of the work party, before we left the house, Veronica called me. She told me I should make a statement, show everyone where I stood. She practically scripted what I said to you. The pieces started clicking together. Veronica hadn't just known about the affair, she'd encouraged it. She hadn't just been investigating me, she'd been orchestrating our marriage's destruction. Why would she do that? I don't know, but I think we need to find out. I paid the check, and we walked out into the afternoon sunshine. For the first time in months, Ember took my arm as we walked to our cars. What now? She asked. Now we figure out what Veronica Mace is really after, and we make sure she doesn't get it. We? I looked at my wife, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. She looked tired, scared, but also determined, like she was ready to fight for something that mattered. We, I confirmed. But first, you need to end things with Liam. Already done. I called him this morning. How'd he take it? About as well as you'd expect from someone whose career just imploded. She almost smiled. Turns out financial irregularities are frowned upon in the finance world. Who knew? We stood by her car, the afternoon sun warm on our faces. For a moment, it felt like we might actually find our way back to each other. Then my phone rang. Mr. Sollace, this is Detective Martinez with the County Sheriff's Office. We need to speak with you about some allegations that have been made regarding your business practices. I looked at Ember, who had gone pale. What kind of allegations? Money laundering? Tax evasion? Fraud? Can you come down to the station this afternoon? Veronica had just escalated from corporate law to criminal accusations. The game was no longer about respect or marriage or hurt feelings. Now it was about survival. The county sheriff's office smelled like disinfectant and despair, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look guilty of something. Detective Martinez was younger than I'd expected, with intelligent eyes and the kind of patient demeanor that probably made suspects confess to things they hadn't done. Thank you for coming in voluntarily, Mr. Sollace. I appreciate your cooperation. Happy to help, though I'm curious about these allegations. Martinez opened a file folder. We received a complaint from a concerned citizen about suspicious financial activity related to your business. Large cash transactions, purchases that seem inconsistent with a typical auto repair shop's revenue. Who made the complaint? I can't reveal that information. but they provided documentation suggesting irregularities in your recent property acquisitions. I leaned back in the uncomfortable plastic chair. Detective, can I ask you something? Sure. Have you ever restored a classic car? Martinez looked puzzled. No. Why? Because if you had, you'd understand that the classic car restoration business operates differently than most industries. I pulled out my phone and showed him photos of recent projects. This is a 1963 Corvette split window that I restored for a collector in California. He paid me $200,000 for the work. Martinez studied the photos. $200,000? For a car? For a specific car, in perfect condition, with documented provenance and professional restoration. It's not transportation, it's art, history, investment. I scrolled to another photo. This is a 1970 Plymouth Cuda that sold at auction for $400,000 after I restored it. I had no idea. Most people don't. They see a mechanic working on old cars and assume it's a hobby business. But collectors, museums, movie studios, they pay premium prices for quality work. I put the phone away. Large cash transactions aren't suspicious in this business. They're normal. Martinez made notes in his file. What about the property acquisitions? The complaint suggests you couldn't afford them on a mechanic's salary. I'm not just a mechanic. I'm a business owner with 15 years of client relationships, contracts with major institutions, and a reputation for quality that allows me to charge premium rates. I pulled out a business card. You're welcome to call my accountant, my banker, or any of my clients. Everything I've purchased was financed through legitimate means with documented income. The complainant suggested possible money laundering. The complainant doesn't understand my business model. I leaned forward. Detective, who do you think would benefit from damaging my reputation? Who might want to see me investigated, harassed, possibly arrested? Martinez set down his pen. Are you suggesting this complaint is malicious? I'm suggesting you might want to investigate the complainant's motives as thoroughly as you're investigating my finances. What makes you think the complainant has ulterior motives? I told him about the confrontation at my shop, about Veronica's threats, about the systematic attempt to intimidate me into silence about the law firm's billing irregularities. So you think Ms. Mace filed this complaint in retaliation? I think someone wants me distracted, discredited, or destroyed, and I think you should ask yourself why. Martinez closed the file. Mr. Sollace, I'm going to be honest with you. The complaint was detailed, specific, and came with documentation that raised legitimate questions. But talking to you now, seeing your business records, understanding your industry, he shrugged. I think someone may have wasted both our time. What happens now? Now I do my job. I'll verify your financial records, speak with your accountant and banker, maybe talk to some of your clients. If everything checks out, and I suspect it will, this investigation goes nowhere. And the complainant? If I determine this complaint was made in bad faith, that becomes a different kind of investigation. I stood up and shook his hand. Detective, I appreciate your professionalism and your willingness to look deeper than the surface. It's what they pay me for. Outside the sheriff's office, Ember was waiting in her car. She'd insisted on coming with me, though I'd made her wait outside to avoid complicating things. How did it go? She asked as I got into the passenger seat. Better than expected. Martinez is smart, thorough. He'll figure out this was a setup. What do we do now? Now we go on offense. We drove to my shop, where Tommy and the crew were working late to finish the Thunderbird restoration. The familiar sounds of tools and engines felt like a sanctuary after the sterile hostility of the sheriff's office. In my office, I pulled out the files I'd been building on Veronica and her firm, financial records, client complaints, billing irregularities, everything I'd gathered over the past week. There's something I haven't told you, I said to Ember, about why I started investigating Veronica in the first place. What do you mean? 3 months ago, I got a call from a client, Mrs. Henderson, who owns the '65 Mustang convertible I restored last year. She was upset about legal bills from your firm, said they were charging her for work that was never done. Ember frowned. Mrs. Henderson? I remember her. Simple estate planning, maybe 10 hours of work total. According to her bill, your firm charged her for 47 hours of work, including 8 hours of senior partner consultation that she says never happened. That's impossible. I would have noticed. Ember stopped. Unless Veronica was handling the billing directly. Mrs. Henderson wasn't the only one. Over the past 3 months, I've heard similar complaints from 4 other clients. All elderly, all wealthy, all being systematically overcharged. I showed Ember the documentation I'd gathered. Her face grew pale as she recognized the pattern. This is fraud, she said finally. Systematic, deliberate fraud. And you were the perfect cover. The honest partner who didn't know what was happening, who could provide credibility while Veronica skimmed money from vulnerable clients. But why target you? Why try to destroy our marriage? Because I was getting too close. Mrs. Henderson wasn't just complaining to me. She was asking me to recommend a different lawyer, someone who wouldn't cheat her. If enough clients started leaving the firm, someone would eventually investigate why. Ember sank into her chair. So she decided to discredit you first. Make it look like you were the criminal, the one with questionable finances and suspicious business practices. And the best way to do that was to turn you against me, make you think I was beneath you, make you vulnerable to someone like Liam, create a scandal that would distract from her own crimes. I can't believe I fell for it. She's good at manipulation. She's been practicing on elderly clients for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. Financial records check out. Complaint appears baseless. We'll be in touch. I showed the message to Ember. Phase 1 complete. Martinez knows the complaint was malicious. What's Phase 2? Phase 2 is where we stop playing defense and start playing offense. I opened my laptop and pulled up a new document. Tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into your office and do something you've never done before. What? You're going to audit every client bill Veronica has handled in the past year. She'll know something's wrong. Good. Let her know. Let her worry. Let her make mistakes. Ember studied the screen. This could destroy the firm. The firm is already destroyed. Veronica destroyed it when she decided to steal from clients. We're just documenting the damage. What about my career? What about it? You want to keep working for someone who's been using you as cover for fraud? Someone who tried to destroy your marriage to protect her crimes? Ember was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence spread across my desk. Finally, she looked up at me. You know what the worst part is? What? I actually believed her. When she said you weren't good enough for me, when she said I deserved better, I believed her, because part of me wanted to believe it. Why? Because it was easier than admitting I was scared. Scared of what? Scared that you were too good for me. Scared that someday you'd realize you married someone who cares more about appearances than substance, someone who would rather pretend to be successful than actually earn it. I reached across the desk and took her hand. Ember, you are successful. You're a good lawyer, a hard worker, someone who built a practice from nothing. The only thing you're guilty of is trusting the wrong person. And having an affair. I agreed. But people make mistakes when they're scared and confused and being manipulated by someone they trust. Can you forgive me? I squeezed her hand. I already have. The question is whether you can forgive yourself. She smiled for the first time in days. I'm working on it. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. Jared, this is Veronica. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the Meridian in an hour. Come alone. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll make sure Detective Martinez gets some additional information about your business practices, information that might be harder to explain away. The line went silent. I looked at Ember, who had heard enough to understand the threat. She's not done, Ember said. No, she's not. But neither are we. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. Call Detective Martinez. Tell him about the client billing fraud. Show him the documentation. Make sure he understands this is all connected. Where are you going? To hear what Veronica has to say, and to end this once and for all. Jared, be careful. She's desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. So do people who've been pushed too far. I kissed her forehead and headed for the door. Outside, the evening air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of autumn and change. Whatever Veronica had planned for our meeting, I was ready. It was time to finish what she'd started. The Meridian at night was a different creature than during the day. Softer lighting, quieter conversations, the kind of atmosphere where deals were made and secrets were traded. Veronica was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance and exit routes. Professional paranoia. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Thank you for making threats. It really clarifies the situation." She was drinking wine, something expensive judging by the bottle on the table. Her usual armor of confidence was still in place, but I could see cracks around the edges. "You've been busy," she said. "Talking to detectives, gathering documents, turning my partner against me." "Your partner turned against you when she realized you'd been using her as cover for fraud." Fraud is such an ugly word. I prefer aggressive billing practices. Call it whatever you want. The result is the same. You stole money from elderly clients who trusted you. Veronica sipped her wine. "Do you know how much money I've made for that firm? How many cases I've won? How many clients I've brought in? I built that practice from nothing. With Ember. Ember provided respectability. I provided results." She leaned forward. "But respectability doesn't pay for corner offices and luxury cars and the kind of lifestyle that attracts the right kind of clients. So you decided to supplement your income by overcharging vulnerable people. I decided to charge what my services are actually worth instead of what some arbitrary fee schedule says they're worth." I signaled the waitress for coffee. "Why did you target me, Veronica? Why try to destroy my marriage? Because you were a problem. Your little mechanic friends were asking too many questions, stirring up too much trouble. Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Davidson, others, they all came to you for advice. They came to me because they trusted me, because I'd done good work for them. They came to you because you were convenient, a friendly ear who could make them feel better about spending money on old cars." Her mask slipped slightly. "But then you started giving them legal advice, telling them to question their bills, suggesting they might want different representation. I told them they deserved honest billing. Apparently, that was revolutionary thinking. It was interfering with my business." The waitress brought my coffee, and I took a moment to study Veronica's face. She looked tired, older than her 45 years, like someone who'd been carrying a heavy load for too long. "So you decided to neutralize the threat," I said. "I decided to solve a problem. Ember was already feeling insecure about your relationship, already questioning whether she'd married beneath her station. It wasn't difficult to encourage those doubts. And Liam? Liam was ambitious and stupid, a perfect combination for my purposes. He thought he was seducing Ember for his own reasons. He never realized he was doing it for mine." "What about the criminal complaint? The money laundering allegations?" Veronica smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine. "That was inspired, wasn't it? Turn your greatest strength into your greatest weakness. All that success, all that money, suddenly it looks suspicious instead of impressive." Except it didn't work. Detective Martinez saw through it in about 10 minutes. Martinez is smarter than I expected. But he's not the only law enforcement contact I have. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text conversation with someone named D.A. Williams. The messages suggested an ongoing relationship, possibly romantic, definitely compromising. "David Williams, district attorney. We've been close for several years. He's very protective of people he cares about. You're threatening to have me prosecuted by your boyfriend?" I'm explaining your options. You can walk away from this investigation, forget about the billing irregularities, let Ember and me handle our business relationship privately, or you can continue pushing and find yourself facing a grand jury investigation that could take years to resolve. I sipped my coffee and considered the threat. It was well crafted, believable, and probably effective against most people. But most people hadn't spent 15 years building a business by being underestimated. Veronica, can I ask you something? What? Do you know what the most expensive car I've ever restored was? She frowned at the apparent non sequitur. I have no idea. A 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. The owner paid me $800,000 to bring it back to original condition. I pulled out my phone and showed her photos of the project. Beautiful car, incredibly rare, worth about $40 million when I was finished with it. What's your point? My point is that when you're working on something worth $40 million, you develop very good insurance policies, comprehensive documentation, multiple backup systems. I put the phone away. You also develop relationships with people who understand the value of what you're protecting. I don't understand. The owner of that Ferrari, Federal Judge Patricia Morrison, appointed to the bench by the President, confirmed unanimously by the Senate, widely respected for her integrity and intelligence. I smiled. She's also very interested in cases involving fraud against elderly victims. Veronica's confidence flickered. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my phone again and showed her a text conversation. Judge Morrison, this is Jared Sollace. I have a situation I'd like to discuss with you regarding systematic fraud against elderly clients by a local law firm. Would you have time for a conversation? The response was immediate. Of course, Jared. I'll make some calls. This kind of predatory behavior is exactly what we need to stop. Veronica stared at the phone screen. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Judge Morrison has been looking for a test case to establish stronger precedents for elder fraud prosecution. Your billing practices are exactly what she's been waiting for. But David Williams is a county district attorney. Judge Morrison is federal. Guess which jurisdiction takes precedence when it comes to interstate fraud involving clients from multiple states? The color drained from Veronica's face. Multiple states? Mrs. Henderson has a winter home in Florida. Mr. Davidson splits his time between here and Arizona. Mrs. Chen divides her time between 3 different states. I leaned back in my chair. Congratulations, Veronica. You've just graduated from local fraud to federal racketeering. She grabbed her wine glass with shaking hands. What do you want? I want you to resign from the firm. I want you to make full restitution to every client you've defrauded, and I want you to stay away from my wife, my business, and my life. And if I do that? Then maybe Judge Morrison decides this is a civil matter instead of a criminal one. Maybe you get to keep your law license and your freedom, even if you lose everything else. I built that firm. You corrupted that firm. Ember built it. You just used it as a vehicle for theft. Veronica finished her wine and set the glass down carefully. You realize this destroys everything I've worked for. You destroyed everything you worked for when you decided to steal from people who trusted you. I stood up. You have until tomorrow morning to submit your resignation. After that, Judge Morrison makes her calls, and this becomes a federal investigation. Jared, wait. She grabbed my arm. There's something else. Something you should know about Ember. What about her? She wasn't as innocent as you think. She knew about some of the billing irregularities. She signed off on several of the inflated invoices. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. You're lying. Am I? Check the files. Check the signatures. Your precious wife isn't the victim you think she is. I removed her hand from my arm. Even if that were true, and I don't believe it is, it doesn't change anything. You're still a thief. You're still finished. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. In the parking lot, I called Ember. How did it go? She asked immediately. It's over. She's going to resign tomorrow. Really? Just like that? I explained her options. She chose wisely. What options? I told her about Judge Morrison, about the federal jurisdiction, about the racketeering implications. Ember was quiet for a long moment. Jared, there's something I need to tell you. My stomach clenched. What? Some of those inflated bills, I signed them. I didn't know they were inflated at the time, but my signature is on documents that overcharged clients. Veronica mentioned that. You already knew? I suspected. But I also know you, Ember. I know you would never knowingly steal from clients, especially elderly ones who trusted you. How can you be sure? Because I've been married to you for 15 years. Because I know the difference between someone who makes mistakes and someone who commits crimes. I got into my truck. Veronica manipulated you into signing those documents the same way she manipulated you into doubting our marriage. The difference is, one was business and one was personal. Can you forgive me for both? I already have. I drove home through streets that looked different than they had that morning. The same houses, the same streetlights, the same familiar landmarks, but somehow transformed by the knowledge that the crisis was ending, that we'd survived something that could have destroyed everything we'd built together. At home, Ember was waiting in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and a stack of legal documents. What's all this? I asked. Resignation letter, client restitution plan, cooperation agreement with law enforcement. She looked up at me. I'm resigning too. Why? Because I can't stay at a firm where I signed fraudulent documents, even unknowingly. Because I need to start over. Build something clean. She paused. And because I want to spend more time with my husband, who apparently is much more interesting than I realized. I sat down across from her. What will you do? I'm thinking about starting my own practice. Small firm, honest billing, clients who need real help instead of just status symbols. She smiled. Maybe I'll specialize in classic car law. Seems like there might be a market for that. There might be. I know some people. I was hoping you'd say that. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the sun set through our kitchen window. For the first time in months, our house felt like a home instead of a showroom. What happens to Veronica? Ember asked. That depends on whether she's smart enough to take the deal I offered her. And if she's not? Then Judge Morrison gets her test case, and Veronica gets to learn about federal prison. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Resignation submitted. Restitution plan filed. Don't contact me again. V. I showed the message to Ember. Apparently she's smarter than I thought. Is it really over? The legal part is over. The personal part. I reached across the table and took her hand. That's up to us. I want to try again. Really try this time. No assumptions, no games, no measuring each other by the wrong standards. I'd like that too. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into evening routines. Families having dinner, kids doing homework, couples walking dogs and discussing their days. Normal life, the kind we'd lost somewhere along the way, but might be able to find again. Jared? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for being worth fighting for. We sat there holding hands across our kitchen table, 2 people who'd nearly lost everything and somehow found their way back to each other. It wasn't the ending either of us had expected when this all started, but it was the one we both needed. Tomorrow, we'd start rebuilding. Tonight, we'd just be grateful we still had something to rebuild. The crisis was over. The marriage was just beginning. The grand reopening of Sollace Custom Restoration was everything I'd hoped it would be. The expanded shop buzzed with activity as clients, friends, and neighbors toured the new facilities. 3 additional bays, a dedicated paint booth, and a customer lounge where people could watch their cars being transformed. Ember stood beside me, wearing jeans and a shop t-shirt, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. Her new law practice was thriving. Turns out there really was a market for honest legal services in the classic car world. Mr. Sollace? A young reporter from the local business journal approached with a notebook. Can you tell us about your expansion plans? We're adding 2 more employees and expanding into motorcycle restoration, I said. There's a growing market for vintage bike collectors. And what about the controversy from earlier this year? The allegations against your wife's former law firm? Ember stepped forward. That situation was resolved. Veronica Mace made full restitution to affected clients and is no longer practicing law. The firm has implemented new oversight procedures to prevent similar issues. The reporter made notes. Any advice for other small business owners? I looked around the shop, at Tommy training a new apprentice, at the gleaming cars in various stages of restoration, at the customers who'd become friends over the years. Never let anyone else define your worth, I said. And never assume you know someone's value based on appearances. The most successful people I know are the ones who focus on doing good work instead of looking important. The reporter thanked us and moved on to interview other guests. Ember and I walked through the shop, greeting visitors and answering questions about our work. Any regrets? She asked as we paused beside a 1969 Boss Mustang I was restoring for a collector in Texas. About which part? Any of it. The confrontation, the investigation, the way everything played out. I considered the question. 6 months ago, our marriage had been a facade, our trust had been shattered, and our future had been uncertain. Now, we were building something genuine together, both personally and professionally. No regrets, I said finally. Sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be put back together properly. Like the cars you restore? Exactly like the cars I restore. You strip away everything that's damaged or fake, get down to the original foundation, and rebuild from there. She smiled and kissed my cheek. I love you, Jared Sollace. I love you too, Ember Sollace. As the evening wound down and the last visitors departed, I stood in my expanded shop, surrounded by the tools and projects that had sustained me through the crisis. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new restorations, new opportunities to take something broken and make it whole again. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, in a place I'd built with my own hands, with a woman who'd learned to see past appearances to the substance underneath, ready to face whatever came next together. The mechanic and the lawyer. It had a nice ring to it,